was a cold evening in the heart of the city. People rushed past each other, lost in their own lives. Laughter and loud music poured from a fancy bar that was known for attracting the rich and famous. Inside the bar, the lights were warm, the glasses were full, and the conversations were loud. But just outside, a quiet man in a simple hoodie stood still, his hands in his pockets, his eyes looking at the glowing sign of the bar. His clothes looked old, his boots dusty, and his beard untrimmed. He didn't look like someone who belonged to this flashy place. Some people walking by glanced at him, but no one paid much attention. Then the bouncer at the door noticed him and frowned. The man didn't say anything. He just slowly walked up to the entrance, calm and respectful. The bouncer stood taller and crossed his arms. "You lost or something?" he asked. The man gave a soft smile and said, "Just looking for a place to relax." The bouncer chuckled and shook his head. "This place isn't for people like you," he replied sharply. The man nodded slightly, not offended, just quiet. He turned around without saying another word. Inside the bar, the owner was standing near the door. He had seen the whole thing through the window and was already laughing. He nudged the manager and pointed. "Look at that guy. Thinks he can just walk in here dressed like that," he said. The manager laughed too, both of them completely unaware of who they had just turned away. That man was Keanu Reeves, a world-famous actor known for his humility and kindness. But tonight, no one noticed him. No one recognized his face under the hoodie, and no one gave him a chance. Keanu didn't wear fancy clothes. He didn't bring a group of bodyguards. And he didn't show off. He just wanted a quiet place to sit after a long day on a nearby film set. A few people on the street did a double take when he walked past them. One girl even whispered, "Was that Keanu?" But she wasn't sure. She took out her phone and started recording quietly from a distance. Just in case she was right, she followed him with her camera for a few seconds. What she caught on video was something she didn't expect. Keanu walked past the bar and turned the corner. Down the street, two homeless men were sitting against a wall, shivering slightly from the cold. Keanu walked up to them slowly and sat down. He didn't act like a celebrity, he acted like a friend. He offered them the coffee he had just bought from a nearby cafe. Then he took off his jacket and gave it to the one who was clearly colder. He didn't speak loudly or try to make a scene. He just listened as the two men spoke about their day, their struggles, their hopes. The girl who had been recording stopped in shock. She realized it really was Keanu Reeves. Her hands were shaking as she posted the video on social media. She didn't even need to write a big caption. She simply wrote. They laughed at Keanu Reeves when then he did this. Back at the bar, the music played louder, the drinks were flowing, and the people were dancing, but none of them knew that they had just turned away one of the kindest and most respected celebrities in the world, and none of them knew that by the next morning their actions would be seen by millions. Keanu didn't care about being rejected. He wasn't angry. He didn't shout. He didn't even try to prove who he was. He just walked away and chose kindness instead. The girl's video slowly started to spread. A few people liked it, then shared it. Within hours, it was being seen. Across the country, the bouncer was still at his post, not knowing that his face was in the video. The bar owner and the manager were laughing over a new drink menu, still unaware of what they had done. But the internet was watching, and the world was about to react. That night, while the bar glowed with neon lights and shallow laughter, Keanu sat quietly with two men most people never even looked at. He didn't tell them he was famous, he didn't try to impress, he just listened, smiled, and treated them like human beings. In a world full of people trying to be important, Keanu chose to be kind, and that right there was the beginning of something much bigger than anyone expected. The next day, the fancy bar opened like usual. Customers came in, the music played, and the lights flashed, but behind the scenes something had started to change. The video clip showing Keanu Reeves being turned away had begun to spread online. More people were watching it, commenting, and sharing it. At first, the bar staff didn't know anything was happening. They were too busy serving drinks and laughing about the homeless guy who came the night before. Inside the office, the bar owner was showing off a new liquor brand to his friends. He was proud of how exclusive his place was. proud that only the rich and stylish came in. He didn't realize that his actions had been recorded and shared with the world. The manager entered the office holding his phone. His face looked confused and a little nervous. "Hey, boss, you should see this," he said. The bar owner took the phone and his smile slowly faded. On the screen was a video titled, "They Laughed at Keanu Reeves, Then He Did This." The video showed the bouncer stopping Keanu at the door, the owner laughing through the window, and then Keanu walking away calmly. The second part of the video showed him sitting on the street with two homeless men, sharing coffee and listening to them like old friends. There was no music, no big speech, just quiet kindness. The internet loved it. The owner's face turned pale. "That's not him," he said quickly. "That can't be him." But the manager zoomed in on the video and it was clear as day. It was Keanu Reeves, his face, his walk, even his voice. There was no denying it. The bar owner cursed under his breath and tossed the phone on the table. "Why didn't anyone tell me it was him?" he shouted. The manager shrugged. He didn't say who he was, he just looked like some regular guy. Outside the bar, things were changing fast. Angry comments were piling up on the bar's social media pages. People were leaving 1-star reviews on Yelp calling the place shallow, rude, and heartless. "You turned away the kindest man in Hollywood," one comment said. Another wrote, "This place judges people by their shoes, not their soul." The bar's Instagram lost thousands of followers within hours. Meanwhile, Keanu still hadn't said anything about the video. He didn't post online, didn't do interviews. He stayed, quiet as usual. But his silence made the story even stronger. People started sharing his past acts of kindness, like how he gave away millions of dollars to stuntmen, or how he rode the subway and helped fans without cameras or fame. The world began to speak for him. Back at the bar, the bouncer was called into the office. He stood nervously as the owner replayed the video. "You didn't recognize him either?" the owner asked angrily. The bouncer shook his head. "No, sir, he looked like just some guy in a hoodie." The owner slammed his fist on the table. "That some guy just destroyed our reputation," he said. "We need to fix this." But fixing, it wasn't so easy. A few hours later, news stations picked up the story. Local reporters called the bar for statements. National blogs wrote headlines like, "Bar Turns Away Hollywood Legend," and "Kindness Over Image, Keanu's Quiet." Lesson? The bar's reputation was falling apart in real time. Customers began canceling their reservations and the phones wouldn't stop ringing. Not for bookings, but for complaints. That same afternoon, a woman walked past the bar holding a sign that said, "Keanu is welcome here." She stood quietly outside the entrance, not yelling, not protesting, just standing there with her message. Within 30 minutes, 2 more people joined her, then 5, then 10. They weren't there to fight. They were there to send a message. One that the world had already understood. Inside the bar, the owner was pacing the floor. He tried calling his PR agent, tried thinking of ways to spin the story. "We didn't know it was him," he repeated over and over. But it didn't matter. The point wasn't who he was. The point was how they treated someone who didn't look rich or important. And that truth hit harder than any viral video. Keanu, on the other hand, was already back on set. He didn't speak about the event, didn't brag, didn't try to correct the story. His team said he wasn't interested in making drama. He was just being himself. And that's what made people love him even more. Later that night, the bar's official Instagram account posted a short message. "We apologize for our behavior and regret what happened. Everyone deserves respect." But it was too late. The internet had already made up its mind. The video had now reached over 25 million views, with thousands of supportive comments praising Keanu's grace and humility. And while the bar tried to do damage control, the man they mocked had already moved on, choosing kindness once again. Without needing thanks, praise, or attention, by the time the sun came up the next day, everything had changed. The video of Keanu Reeves being turned away from the bar was no longer just a small post. It had become one of the most talked about clips on the internet. Millions of people had seen it, liked it, and shared it with strong emotions. Comments poured in from every corner of the world. People were shocked, angry, and deeply moved by how Keanu acted with quiet dignity while the bar staff mocked him. On social media, hashtags like Keanu kindness and Raj respect all started trending. Fans began sharing their own stories of meeting Keanu in real life. One man posted a picture of Keanu helping his grandmother cross a busy street. Another woman shared a memory of how Keanu waited in line behind her at a coffee shop and paid for everyone after her without saying a word. These stories weren't new, but the video had reminded the world of what made Keanu so beloved. He never acted like a celebrity. He acted like a decent human being. Meanwhile, the girl who had filmed the original video couldn't believe what was happening. She had simply posted the clip because it made her feel something. She had no idea it would go viral in just one night. Now her phone was buzzing every minute with messages from reporters, influencers, and even TV networks asking for permission to use her video. Her simple caption, "They laughed at Keanu Reeves. Then he did this," had turned into a symbol of how the world saw kindness in a dark moment. Back at the bar, the staff were in full panic. The bouncer's face was clearly visible in the video, and he was being called names online. The manager tried deleting comments from the bar's pages, but they just kept coming. People weren't just angry that they rejected Keanu. They were angry that the bar judged someone just by how they looked. Even those who didn't know much about Keanu were upset. "You don't treat people like this," one comment said, famous or not. The bar owner didn't know what to do. He had built his place to be popular, to attract influencers and rich customers. But now, no influencer wanted to be seen there. Local celebrities canceled their events at the bar. Sponsors started pulling their support quietly. One of the bar's liquor brands even messaged them asking to remove their name from the menu until the situation was resolved. Everything the owner had built over the years was falling apart, not because of a fight or a crime, but because of one small moment of disrespect. What made it worse was that Keanu still hadn't said a single word about it. His silence spoke louder than anything. It wasn't because he was scared or ashamed, and it was because he didn't need to defend himself. The truth was already out there, and his actions said everything. While others might have sued or posted angry rants, Keanu just moved on with his life. That grace made the world respect him even more. News channels began covering the story in more detail. They played the full video and then added older clips of Keanu's past kindness, like the time he gave his seat to a woman on the subway, or how he waited for hours with stranded passengers during a canceled flight. Reporters called him the most humble actor in Hollywood and asked why more celebrities couldn't be like him. Talk shows played the clip and gave standing ovations. Comedians made jokes about the bar owner, saying, "How do you mess up that badly and send away John Wick?" In the middle of all this, one small detail stood out. While the world was focused on the video and the bar, some people noticed the two homeless men Keanu had talked to. In the video, you could clearly see him giving his jacket to one of them and sharing coffee with the other. They weren't props in a scene. They were human beings, and Keanu had treated them with more respect than the bar owner treated a customer. Soon, people started asking about those two men. Who are they? Is anyone helping them now? Journalists began searching for them, hoping to tell their story too. Some viewers sent donations to homeless shelters in their name. Others offered jobs, clothes, and food to people in their own cities. A simple act of kindness had started a movement, and Keanu didn't even try to make it happen. It was just who he was. The girl who posted the video was later interviewed on TV. When asked why she recorded it, she said, "I just had a feeling he was someone special." She never expected that one small clip would change so many lives. But it had, and it was still growing. She smiled and added, "Sometimes the kindest people wear the quietest clothes." And while the internet kept spreading the story, the bar remained mostly empty. Tourists would stop outside just to take photos of the place that turned away Keanu Reeves. Some even made memes with jokes like, "No hoodie, no entry, unless you're a legend." But deep down, people weren't laughing. They were learning. What happened wasn't just about a famous actor being rejected. It was about how we treat people when we don't know who they are. Keanu showed the world that kindness doesn't need a camera, a microphone, or a spotlight. It only needs a heart. The video of Keanu Reeves sitting with two homeless men had now reached over 50 million views. It was everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Even the evening news. People were sharing it not just because he was a movie star, but because of what he represented: kindness, humility, respect, all the things that seemed rare in the world. The bar that rejected him had become a symbol too, but not in a good way. News anchors spoke about the moment with emotion in their voices. In a world where celebrities often show off their wealth, Keanu showed us what true character looks like, one said. Another added, "This story reminds us that sometimes we judge people too quickly, and we forget that greatness can look ordinary." Old stories about Keanu started trending again. Fans remembered how he gave away millions from his salary to the crew of the Matrix movies. Others remembered how he secretly supported children's hospitals and cancer research without ever using his name. These weren't rumors. They were facts, confirmed by people who had worked with him. People began to realize that this wasn't just a nice guy who had one good moment. Keanu had been like this for decades, and the world was only now paying full attention. Then Keanu finally spoke. It wasn't a long post, not a video, not a press conference, just one sentence on his private social media account. He wrote, "Kindness is free. Judgment can be expensive." That was all. No anger, no blame, no drama. Just a quiet reminder to the world. That one line was shared more than 1,000,000 times in a single day. It was printed on posters, turned into t-shirts, and posted. In classrooms, everyone understood exactly what he meant. Meanwhile, the bar was falling apart. Customers had stopped coming. The lights inside were still on, but the seats were mostly empty. The bar owner tried to act like everything was fine, but he couldn't. Ignore the reviews. Every time someone searched the bar online, they saw comments like, "Shallow place, no soul," or "This bar doesn't deserve your money." Even people who had never met Keanu were angry, not because he was a star, but because he was treated like trash for not looking rich. The staff began quitting one by one. The bartender left first, then 2 waitresses. One of them posted online, "I can't work for a place that treats people like they're not human." The manager stopped showing up, too embarrassed to face the public. Soon the owner was alone, staring at the empty chairs and the glowing sign outside that now felt like a lie. At the same time, something beautiful was happening elsewhere. The 2 homeless men Keanu sat with had become famous too. Reporters found them and asked about that night. One of them said, "He didn't act like he was better than us. He didn't even say his name. He just asked us how our day was going." The other added, "I've never felt that respected in years. He made us feel seen." When their story aired, people all over the country began sending them support. A charity offered them shelter and food. A restaurant gave them part-time jobs to help them get back on their feet. And in a surprising twist, someone donated a large sum of money to the same homeless shelter where those 2 men used to sleep. The staff at the shelter smiled when they saw the name on the check. It simply said, "A friend." But they all knew who it really was. It didn't stop there. Schools across the country began using the story as a lesson in character. Teachers told students that kindness wasn't about fame, but about how you treat the quietest person in the room. A high school printed Keanu's quote on their hallway wall, and students wrote letters thanking him for being a real-life role model. Some of those letters even made it to his movie set, and Keanu read every single one of them between scenes. Even people who had never watched his movies were moved. An old man in Texas said on a local radio show, "That guy reminded me what it means to be a gentleman." A woman in New York said, "My son saw the video and hugged me. He said he wanted to be like the man in the hoodie." Keanu had done more than just walk away from a bar. He had touched hearts across the world. The bar, now desperate, tried one last move. The owner posted a public apology. He stood in front of his camera and said, "We're sorry. We didn't recognize Mr. Reeves. We made a mistake." But people didn't buy it. The comments were full of replies like, "You're only sorry because you got caught. And you shouldn't treat anyone like that, not just famous people." The damage was done, and no amount of words could erase what the world had seen. Keanu never responded to the apology. He didn't need to. He had already said everything. With his actions, and sometimes actions are louder than fame, louder than money, louder than anything, the bar was no longer just a place where drinks were served. It had become a symbol of everything people hated about how the world treated others. It didn't matter that it was once one of the trendiest spots in the city. Now it was the place that turned away Keanu Reeves. The place where kindness had been ignored and image had been everything. Inside the bar, the mood had changed. The lights were still on. The music still played softly. But no one was there to enjoy it. Tables were empty, bar stools untouched, and the laughter that once filled the room was gone. The owner walked slowly across the wooden floor, looking at the empty seats. He picked up a half-used menu and sighed. The silence felt heavier than any words. The staff had nearly all left one by one. They had quit or stopped showing up. The bartender found a new job at a smaller place that welcomed everyone. The server, who used to bring drinks with a smile, now worked at a family-run cafe across town. Even the DJ, who once played for packed crowds, had deleted the bar's name from his social media bio. The owner tried calling a few of them, but no one answered. They didn't want to come back, not after everything that had happened. The manager finally showed up, looking tired and nervous. He held his phone out and showed the owner the latest news. "They're talking about us again," he said quietly. The headline read, "Keanu's gentle silence crushes loud ego." Another one said, "Bar's cold. Welcome goes viral." Again. The owner shook his head. "I said sorry, what else do they want from me?" he muttered. But deep down he knew the truth. The damage wasn't just from the video. It was from the way he treated someone he thought was beneath him. People had made up their minds, and they didn't care if it was Keanu or just a stranger. What mattered was the message, everyone deserves respect. The bar's apology video had only made things worse. The owner looked stiff, nervous, and more concerned about saving his business than showing real regret. Viewers could see it. They could feel it, and the comments showed no mercy across the city. The girl who recorded the video was invited to speak at a local school. She stood in front of teenagers and said, "I didn't know what would happen when I posted it. I just felt something wasn't right, and when I saw how kind he was afterward, I knew the world needed to see it." The students clapped and some even cried. It wasn't about fame anymore. It was about learning to be kind even when no one's watching. Keanu's quote, "Kindness is free, judgment can be expensive," had now appeared on bus stops, coffee cups, posters, and even store windows. People began using it in everyday life. Some restaurants put it on their doors, others added it to their menus. One hospital even printed it on the walls of its waiting room. The world had taken that one sentence and made it a quiet revolution. And through it all, Keanu stayed silent. He didn't show up on talk shows, didn't post follow-ups. He went back to work, filming his movie and living his life as usual. But every time someone spotted him, they shared another story. One woman said he helped carry groceries for her grandmother. A man in another city posted a photo of Keanu fixing his bike on the street without asking for help. These small moments kept reminding people why they had fallen in love with his story in the first place. Then something unexpected happened. A new post began trending. It was a picture of the two homeless men Keanu had sat with. But this time, they looked different. They were wearing clean shirts, smiling, and standing in front of a cafe. The caption read, "From the street to stability, thanks to one kind soul." It turned out that one of the men was now working part-time at the cafe, while the other had started helping at the local shelter. Someone had given them a second chance. And while no one said it out loud, everyone knew who inspired it. The reporter who interviewed them asked, "Do you still talk to Keanu?" One of them smiled and replied, "He came by last week, didn't say much, just asked how we were doing and gave us each a warm coat." The other added, "He told us to stay strong, that the world was watching now." That one visit meant more to them than any viral video. They didn't care that he was famous. They cared that he saw them as people. Back at the bar, the owner finally gave up. He placed a closed sign on the door and locked up for the night. He sat on the steps outside and looked at the street. It was quiet now. No crowds, no cameras, just the memory of one night that changed everything. He pulled out his phone and watched the video again. This time he didn't get angry. He didn't blame the girl or the viewers. For the first time he just watched and listened, and when Keanu gave his jacket to the homeless man, The bar owner felt something in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. Regret. The world was still talking about Keanu Reeves. But this time, the focus was not on the bar or the viral video. The attention had shifted to something deeper, something that touched hearts in a quiet and powerful way. The two homeless men Keanu had shared coffee with were now at the center of a new story, a story about second chances, and how one simple act of kindness could change someone's entire life. A reporter from a local station had found the two men after days of searching. They were no longer sitting in the same alley where the video was filmed. One of them, named Ray, now worked part-time at a small cafe. The owner of the cafe had seen the video and recognized Ray's face. Instead of ignoring it, he went out looking for him. When he found Ray, he offered him a job cleaning tables and taking out trash. Ray didn't ask for money, but the cafe owner paid him fairly and gave him a hot meal every day. The second man, Joe, had been taken in by a shelter that had received thousands of dollars in donations after the video went viral. They offered him a warm bed, food, and counseling for the first time in years. Joe had hope. He began helping around the shelter, folding blankets, serving meals, and talking to others who were struggling just like he had been. People began calling him the quiet helper. When the reporter asked them how they felt about the attention, Ray simply said, "I didn't think anyone cared before, but now I feel like I matter." Joe nodded and added, "He didn't treat us like garbage, he treated us like people." They didn't mention Keanu by name, but it was clear who they were talking about. One rainy evening, something happened that made their story even more special. Keanu came back quietly, just like before. No cameras, no crowd. He walked into the cafe where Ray was working and ordered a black coffee. When Ray saw him, he froze for a moment, then smiled wide. Keanu smiled back, handed him a warm jacket and said, "Thought you might need this." Ray took the jacket and said, "Thank you for seeing me that night." Keanu just nodded, took his coffee and sat near the window watching the rain. He didn't talk about the video or the news, he didn't act like a hero. He was just a man who remembered a promise to be kind. When he left, he placed a large tip on the counter and whispered to the owner, "Keep giving people chances." Later that same night, he visited the shelter where Joe was helping. He didn't go inside. He just dropped off a box filled with clean clothes, socks, and 2 sleeping bags. One of the volunteers saw him and asked, "Are you Keanu?" He smiled and replied, "Just a friend." Then he disappeared into the night without waiting for thanks. That moment wasn't caught on camera, but the shelter staff never forgot it. Word about these quiet visits spread slowly, and when the public heard, it only made them love Keanu more. People started calling shelters in their own cities, asking how they could help. One teenager from another town raised money and donated backpacks filled with supplies to a local homeless center. A woman started a campaign called Kind Like Keanu, where people were encouraged to help strangers without expecting anything in return. Meanwhile, the bar where everything started stayed closed. A "For Lease" sign now hung in the window. Graffiti had been cleaned, but the memory remained. Tourists sometimes stopped to take pictures, not because it was famous, but because it reminded them of the story. A small boy once pointed at the door and asked his mother, "Is that where the kind man got kicked out?" She nodded and said, "Yes, but he walked away like a king." Back at the cafe, Ray continued to work hard, saving every bit of money he earned. His goal was simple: to get a small apartment and live with dignity. One evening, as he cleaned the counter, he told a customer, "That man didn't just give me coffee, he gave me my future back." The customer smiled and replied, "Then you're already richer than most." Joe, now volunteering full-time, started writing down stories of people at the shelter. His goal was to share their voices, so the world would understand that everyone has a story. One day he said to a group of new arrivals, "If someone like Keanu can sit with us, then maybe we can stand up again too." Those words gave people courage. Keanu never spoke about the shelter, the cafe, or the men he helped. He didn't post pictures, didn't ask for interviews. He just kept living the same quiet life, helping where he could, giving without noise. His kindness wasn't for show. It was real, and the world could feel it. In a time when people often chase attention, Keanu walked away from it, and in doing so, he became something far greater than just a movie star. He became a symbol of hope. The bar owner sat in his empty building, staring at the blank walls and quiet rooms. The lights were still working, but the place felt dead. His phone didn't ring anymore. No reservations, no events. Just silence. The once famous spot that had VIP guests and long waiting lists was now just a memory, a reminder of a mistake that had gone far beyond one night. He checked the bar's social media again, hoping maybe things had calmed down. But the comments were still there. People hadn't forgotten. Every time he posted anything, even a photo of a drink, the replies were filled with reminders. Respect people. You judged a good man. Not everyone wears a suit. The damage wasn't going away. And now, it wasn't just about Keanu. It was about the message behind it. The manager had quit quietly 2 days ago, leaving his keys on the desk. He didn't say goodbye, just walked away. One of the waiters sent a message to the owner, not with anger, but with honesty. You didn't just turn away a celebrity. The message said, you turned away kindness and now you're facing the price. That message hit him harder than the thousands of hate comments online. He knew deep down that everything people were saying was true. He had judged a man by his clothes, by his appearance, by the fact that he walked alone without an entourage or a designer jacket. And now the whole world had seen that moment, again and again, played in videos, discussed in schools, and remembered by millions. It wasn't just about losing customers, and it was about losing respect. He walked outside the bar and looked at the door. The same door he told the bouncer to guard so carefully. The door that didn't open for Keanu Reeves. He remembered laughing, that night, mocking the man in the hoodie. He had no idea who he was turning away, and even if he had, would it have mattered? That question stayed in his mind like a weight he couldn't lift. Down the street, life was moving forward. The cafe where Ray worked was full of smiles. People came in not just for coffee, but to see the man whose story had touched their hearts. Ray still wore the jacket Keanu had given him, not because it was from someone famous, but because it reminded him of that night. That one simple act that told him he mattered. Ray saved most of his money and was now looking for a small room to rent, a place of his own, something he hadn't had in years. Joe was doing well too. He had become a quiet leader at the shelter, helping new people settle in. He always reminded them to believe in themselves. He told them that sometimes the world sees you when you least expect it. His favorite words to say were, "One act of kindness can echo louder than 1,000 voices." People respected him not because he was once homeless, but because he showed strength through softness. Meanwhile, Keanu kept living his quiet life. He didn't talk about the past, didn't post pictures or interviews. He was seen a few times walking through the city alone, smiling politely at fans who recognized him. A few people posted about meeting him, but they all said the same thing. He's just so real. A teacher from a nearby school reached out to Ray and asked if he would come speak to the students. At first, Ray was nervous. He had never spoken to a class before. But when he walked in and saw the kids looking at him with wide eyes, he took a deep breath and told his story. He told them how he had been invisible to the world, until one man sat down beside him and listened. You don't need to be famous to matter, he told them. You just need to be kind. The children clapped and some even cried. One student stood up and said, I want to help people too. That day, the school started a new club called Kind Like Keanu, where students did small acts of kindness in the community. It wasn't just a trend anymore, it had become a movement. Across the internet, people were still using Keanu's quote in their daily lives. Kindness is free. Judgment can be expensive. It showed up in emails, posters, speeches, even business meetings. Companies used it in training sessions, reminding employees that the way you treat others matters more than the title they carry. The bar's closed sign stayed up for weeks. People walked past it and shook their heads, some took photos, others just paused to think. It had become more than a building. It was now a symbol of a lesson the world would not forget. And as the sun set over the city, two things remained clear. One, a mistake made in judgment could echo forever. And two, one quiet act of kindness could rise above all the noise, reminding everyone that true greatness is found in how we treat people when no one is watching. A few quiet weeks passed, and the city slowly returned to its normal rhythm. People still talked about the story, but now it had become something bigger than just one night at a bar. It had become a reminder that kindness matters and that sometimes the most powerful actions are the ones done in silence. Keanu Reeves had walked away without anger, but his actions stayed in everyone's hearts. One morning, something unexpected happened. Keanu came back to the same street. He wore a hoodie again, his steps calm and quiet. No cameras followed him. No bodyguards were near. Just the same gentleman who had once stood outside that bar with no fuss. This time he wasn't here for a drink. He had come to visit someone. He stopped in front of the small cafe where Ray now worked full-time. Ray was inside, wiping tables when he saw him. His eyes widened, and a smile spread across his face. He rushed to open the door. "You came back," Ray said, a little surprised. Keanu nodded and smiled softly. "I wanted to see how you were doing." They sat at a corner table. Just like two old friends, Ray told him how life had changed, how he was saving money, how he was helping others at the shelter too. Keanu listened without interrupting, nodding slowly and sipping his coffee. He didn't ask for attention. He didn't talk about himself. He just cared. And that made Ray feel like the richest man in the room. After a while, Keanu stood up and walked down the street. He passed the old bar, which was still closed. A faded sign now hung on the door, the paint chipping and the windows dusty. Keanu paused for a moment, not to judge, but to remember. He didn't feel hate. He didn't feel proud. He just felt peace. The door had once stayed shut for him, but now he knew some doors weren't meant to open, because something better was waiting on the other side. A small group of people nearby noticed him and pointed, but they didn't shout or rush him. They just watched quietly, as if seeing something rare and special. One woman whispered to her son, "That's the man I told you about, the one who helped those people." The boy looked up and asked, "Is he a superhero?" She smiled and said, "No, he's something better. He's a kind man who didn't need a cape to change lives." At the shelter, Joe was busy helping an elderly man settle into a clean bed, when one of the volunteers told him Keanu had stopped. By the cafe, Joe smiled and nodded. "He always keeps his promises," he said. Joe didn't need to see him again. The memory of that one evening, that simple act, had already given him everything he needed: hope, dignity, and the strength to stand up again. Across the city, schools continued their Kind Like Keanu projects. Children wrote letters to strangers, made thank you cards for teachers, and gave out free hugs on the street. Even businesses started encouraging their employees to treat everyone, customers, delivery workers, janitors, with more respect. The quote, "Kindness is free. Judgment can be expensive," was now on coffee cups, bus stops, classroom doors, and even tattooed on one man's arm. The world hadn't just heard the story. It had changed because of it. The girl who recorded the video in the beginning had also moved on, but not without learning something deep. She was now studying filmmaking, hoping to tell real stories that could make a difference. In her final school project, she wrote, "I thought I caught a viral moment, but what I really captured was humanity." Even the bar owner, who had lost everything, started to reflect deeply. He stayed out of the public eye, but one day he was seen at the shelter dropping off food. Quietly, he didn't wear fancy clothes or ask for forgiveness. He just left the boxes and walked away. Maybe he wasn't ready to face the world, but maybe he was learning too. Sometimes regret is the first step toward real change. And Keanu? He continued living as he always had, quietly, kindly, without pride. He never gave a speech about the event, never mentioned the video. He let the world speak for itself, and in that silence, he became a louder voice than anyone could imagine. A voice for respect, for compassion, for seeing others not as they appear but as they are inside. His kindness didn't fix the world, but it did spark something real. A ripple that turned into waves. A moment that turned into a movement. And all because one man on one night decided to treat strangers like human beings. As the city lights flickered on that evening and the streets filled with life again, one thing became clear. Real kindness doesn't need cameras, crowds, or applause. It just needs courage. And that night, the world learned what that kind of courage really looked like.